around.
We reject the ideology of globalism, and we embrace the doctrine of patriotism.
Not only will this tax plan pay for itself, but it will pay down debt.
There are moral and legal obligation questions that I think we'll have to wrestle with as a society.
When we as people go wobbly on the truth, we go wobbly on America.
All you have to do is look at the numbers, look at what we've done.
And this is only the beginning.
Mic test 1, 2. Am I coming through there, Mary?
You are.
Wonderful. Good morning, everyone. You're tuned in to Evidence of Design on 100.9 FM WXIR. This is Evidence of Design. I'm your host, Jason Taylor, joined in WXIR studios by my good friend and co-host, Mary Lawrence.
Good morning.
It is Saturday, April 3rd. It's a holiday weekend for a lot of folks. For those celebrating Easter, happy Easter. For those celebrating Passover, happy Passover. For those celebrating other holidays that aren't off the top of my head, happy holidays to you too.
I don't know if there are any other holidays. I mean, I'm sure there are, but I don't know what other holidays might happen this weekend.
Right. Doesn't feel much like a holiday weekend to me. Just personally, I don't know. I just sort of... nothing has sort of felt like anything the past year in COVID land. You know, it's like when the Christmas holidays passed, it was like, is it Christmas? When Halloween passed, it was like, is it Halloween? So I don't know.
Oh yeah, I remember there was a point in late January, I think, where I saw some of my neighbors who still had Christmas lights up from Christmas, and walking past, I was like, oh, Christmas must be soon. And then I realized it happened a month before.
Yes, exactly. So we're about to get our co-host Matt Treadwell in here. I want to let you all know, though, that it's, again, Saturday, April 3rd. That means we are live. You're welcome to participate with us throughout the show by giving us a call in WXIR Studios, 585-219-8889. What might you call in and participate about? Well, on today's show, we are going to be talking about what is included, with the Biden administration's proposed multi-trillion-dollar infrastructure plan. As part of that infrastructure plan, they're devoting hundreds of billions of dollars to many different initiatives, such as rebuilding, infrastructure, but also putting more money towards electric vehicles, towards education, towards other forms of transportation, not just cars, but also trains, renovating homes. It's a lot of stuff inside of this multi-trillion-dollar stimulus package. It would be one of the largest public investments in American history since, 3 weeks ago, since the $2.2 trillion stimulus plan that the Biden administration passed. So a lot of money coming potentially out of the federal government. We're going to talk about what's in that. What is also proposed in this $1 trillion stimulus plan, however, is raising taxes on the wealthiest corporations and maybe even some of the wealthiest individuals. So why is that important? Because there are several reports that just came out this week, and hey, we've covered this on the show before, and it's been known for a while in America that the wealthiest individuals and corporations are able to abscond from or, remove themselves from the burden of paying what should be perhaps seen as their fair share in taxes. So we're talking about two things today on Evidence of Design. One, the multi-trillion-dollar infrastructure stimulus plan proposed by the Biden administration. And two, the extent to which the wealthiest individuals and corporations, according to recent reports, abscond from paying their fair share in taxes. If you want to participate throughout the show on those topics or any others, again, 585-219-8889. We're also on Twitter and Facebook at Radio EOD. Mary, are we broadcasting through our Facebook? Are we live streaming?
We sure are live on Facebook, so if you want to hop on to our Radio EOD page on Facebook and see Jason's masked mug, then you can do so. And you can also leave us a message there that we can read on air and react to that way.
That's for free, folks. We're trying to figure out a way to commoditize seeing my face. We're still trying to figure it out, but, we're not quite there yet. I think you might have to one of us might have to step away from the mic real quick. Thanks, Mary. Matt, welcome into the studio. Hopefully your mic's on.
Sounds like it.
Awesome. Welcome, Matt. Hey, so Matt, do you want to start us out by talking about that couple $1 trillion infrastructure plan? You know what I mean? A little bit of money here, a little bit of money there, going to a few things.
What do you want to know?
Well, I want to know, how much is it for, and what is it going to? What can I expect as a citizen of this great country?
So it's a little over $2 trillion. Actually, it's like 2.25, I think, or roundabouts. And the Biden administration sort of broke the funding that these $2 trillion will go to into sort of 4 categories, those being infrastructure at home, transportation, research development, workforce development, and manufacturing, and the caretaking economy. And they're each getting roughly the same. Infrastructure at home is the most at $650 billion,
Whoa.
Transportation at $621 billion, research and development at $580 billion, and caretaking economy at $400 billion. So we could go into some of the specifics of what each of those entails, if you'd like.
Yeah, I guess just for context here, Matt, it feels like at least our whole adult life, we've heard politicians talk about the need to spend more on infrastructure. I think that has gotten more and more pertinence as time has gone on, at least for our lives in the past 30 or so years. I specifically remember in the 2016 campaign in particular, where both of the top Democratic and Republican candidates were saying, need more infrastructure, Russia and China making us look bad. Russia can, build an airport in a week. During COVID, they were saying, China can build a hospital in a day. I don't know how good that's going to be, but they can do it, And here, while in America, our roads, bridges, airports are crumbling. So I guess, there's been more and more energy around investing in our infrastructure. Personally, I think that's a good thing. But despite the seeming bipartisan nature in investing in infrastructure where everyone benefits, right, and everyone thinks that's a good thing, nothing's been done about it because I guess those in power in Washington can't figure out how to pay for it. So, I guess that's the context I want to provide, Matt, that this is actually the closest we've been, I think, to a massive investment in our infrastructure. Is that right?
It certainly feels that way, and certainly a long time. Something to point out is that part of the reason why this bill is already facing some, resistance, especially among Republicans and, again, it's more centrist Democrats, is because of 2 things, really. One, just because of how expensive it is in light of the recent $1.9 trillion bill that was passed for the $1,400 checks that went out to many Americans and the extension of unemployment benefits. So, you already have deficit hawks complaining about, we're going to overheat the economy, which I don't know what that means. But, maybe it should overheat. I don't know.
That sounds like a global warming reference, actually.
Yeah, it is kind of still cold outside. I feel like, turning up the thermostat a bit isn't the worst thing.
And that kind of leads into the second reason why this bill is facing resistance is because a lot of the money in it is allocated towards various clean energy initiatives, which many Republicans are on record saying, we need roads. We don't need electricity. Or,
Texas doesn't need electricity, right?
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
They just need more fossil fuels so they can, burn their gas stoves in their homes when they're out of electricity. I don't know. more coal. So, Yeah, go for it, Matt.
Oh, no, you go ahead.
Well, so you're saying that there's been resistance to this plan. Of course, Republicans are going to resist anything that Joe Biden does, unless Joe Biden literally says, "I'm going to get rid of all taxation, and I'm going to make it so that no one that all Democratic voters can't vote." Then Republicans are going to oppose that. So
I think Joe Biden could literally adopt the Republican platform, and they'd still vote against it just on, principle or something. But
yeah, culture war.
And that's not even to say that Joe Biden's this great progressive guy. But I am saying that the Republican Party is insane.
Is lacking in morals and integrity.
Yeah.
He could actually. I mean, the other thing we could do is actually be more progressive and ask for what we want. And, if they're going to oppose it anyway, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, do it anyways.
Yeah.
So, instead of focusing on perhaps the critique, let's still focus on what's in this $2.2 trillion federal big plan to focus on infrastructure, among other things, Matt. So you mentioned there's, $600 billion to actually focus on infrastructure. What else is in there?
Yeah, I mean, I could get into some specifics. I can throw a lot of numbers at you if you'd like.
I'm a big fan of numbers.
All right, listeners, buckle up. So we've got $115 billion for roads, bridges, and highway repairs. That's great. I'm really excited about that. I must have hit 17 potholes on my way over to the station today.
Oh, boy.
There's $20 billion to improve road safety for pedestrians and cyclists.
Ooh, I like that.
I thought you'd be excited about that, Mary. $100 billion to expand high-speed broadband internet access across the country.
More people to play video games against. Huge fan.
Yeah. Got to get my my Fortnite kill streak going. Building that brand. $100 billion to build new and upgrade existing schools. That's great.
Schools?
Yeah.
Ugh.
Education.
Boring.
$100 billion for improved power lines and a shift towards clean energy. Republicans probably not too excited about that. $174 billion for boosting the electrical vehicle market. So that includes rebates and tax incentives for Americans who purchase electric cars, transitioning thousands of public buses from diesel to electricity, and creating incentives for state and local governments to build electrical vehicle charging stations with a goal of 500,000 stations nationwide by 2030.
That sounds cool. I don't know. I mean, I was on the car market recently, and I couldn't really find an affordable
Tesla
hybrid or electric vehicle. Nothing around $20,000, which perhaps is sort of the rough baseline for a brand new car. So seeing the price of electric vehicles come down would be, I think, great. And we also heard, of course, General Motors come out with perhaps what was seen as a surprising announcement recently that they're going to go entirely to electric vehicles by around 2030, if not a little bit after, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, when half the country is already underwater. But
right, I mean,
better late than never.
Water conducts electricity. There's got to be some logic
They're
there.
thinking about the long game.
They're going to be hovering the cars by then, maybe,
So there's a lot of stuff here so far. Highways, bridges, roads, expanding internet access, rebuilding or upgrading schools, transitioning to more clean energy and strengthening the power grid, expanding the electric vehicle market. What else is there, Matt?
There's $85 billion to improve public transportation.
Ooh, I like that too.
Another Mary seal of approval.
Yes.
$80 billion for Amtrak's repair backlog, which is apparently enormous.
Wait for the Biden administration to release their fact sheet on this, and it's going to say at the bottom, endorsed by evidence of design, and then a quote from Mary saying, "Ooh, I approve."
No, it's, "Ooh, I like this." You got to get it right.
We're calling it here, folks, on Rochester's #1 public affairs. Whatever.
Yeah,
Sorry.
poor Amtrak.
Yeah, poor Amtrak.
There's $213 billion to build and retrofit more than 2 million homes, build and rehabilitate more than 500,000 homes for low and middle income buyers, and invest $40 billion in public housing.
Wow. Yeah, the affordable housing crisis in this country has been here for a long time, and COVID, of course, has exposed it and also made it much worse. So seeing opportunities to invest more in public housing, that's an awesome thing. I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, quick anecdote. Yesterday, I was looking up an old address that I lived at 6 years ago because someone needed it. And I happened, as I was trying to find the address, the rent came up. Now, when I lived there 6 years ago, I shared it with a roommate. The rent in Pittsford was $840 a month. It is currently over $1,200.
Holy
It
crap.
has been 6 years. Like, that, it totally blew my mind.
Yeah, and nothing has changed in that area, Mary. I remember where that was, and nothing's like no brand new, stadium like opened across the street or anything. It's just sort
No.
of the same place. 6
Same
years
place,
ago.
and I'm sure no one's income has raised by that much, by
Right.
50%.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
If only.
I mean,
If only there was a way to get that to happen. Oh, well.
Yeah. So affordable housing, awesome. Sounds
Yeah.
great to me.
This is one I'm weirdly excited about. $111 billion for clean water, including $45 billion to replace lead pipes and service lines, which would reduce lead exposure in 400,000 schools and childcare facilities.
why is it weird to be excited about that? That's great.
It just seemed like, we're doing this now.
Yeah, Flint, Michigan, all of it is just like, really?
Yeah.
I mean,
But really, put them first on the list.
right here in Rochester, there's a big lead paint problem, at least. I'm sure lead pipes, too. I just remember reading plenty of reports about lead paint in homes, and we know that lead exposure at all stages of life, but especially for children, is particularly damaging, leads to long-term cognitive and other health declines. And really, it's really a thing. It's only a problem that really affects poor, marginalized, minority, and previously redlined communities. Well, essentially still redlined because we're still living in that legacy, where those neighborhoods had never had the investment to get rid of their lead paint or piping. And so this is really important. It literally changes people's physical and mental health for their lives. And it's a fairly easy fix. We just need someone to do it, need the money
Yeah.
behind it.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to see which politicians stand against that.
Our pro-lead, the lead lobbyist group.
More lead.
We-
More lead for everybody.
We need more lead. Lead pencils, only pencils.
It turns out that there is a sort of breaking point where if you, up until that point, if you consume enough lead, it's damaging. But if you pass that point, then you actually unlock psychokinetic abilities and ESP.
You got to find the sweet spot.
Yeah.
You won't know until 30 years down the line, but golly, by then, the statute of limitations will have run out, so you can't sue us.
And you'll be dead.
And we'll have your money. I guess so. Matt, we on Evidence of Design on 100.9 FM WXIR are talking about what is in the $2.2 trillion infrastructure plan proposed by the Biden administration. What else is in there? There's a lot so far.
Yeah, so the next two categories, the care economy and the research and development and manufacturing and training bits of the bill, there was less sort of specific information about them. So the care economy, which is basically the part of the economy, which I'm putting in scare quotes, which is focused around sort of assisted living, caretaking, and it is essentially expand access to home and community-based care for seniors and people with disabilities, as well as raising wages and creating more benefits for the people who staff those facilities.
That's a big deal. There's I sound like a broken record here. There's been a lot of reports in recent years, but I guess this is good that I'm repeating this because there's evidence that the government is being responsive to evidence that has been shown that we need investment in, whether it's public infrastructure, strengthening the power grid, clean water, or now, Matt, you're just covering $400 billion for the caretaking economy. If you Google top 10 jobs in the future, human services caretaking will be in the top 10, if not top 5. Because there is so-called the silver tsunami, where a lot of the baby boomer generation is retiring, they're getting older, growing geriatric community, so there's going to be need more people to take care of elders. We also know that even
The elders are the ghosts of Tsushima.
the ghosts of Tsushima, exactly. And also we know that there are lots of folks, throughout COVID we've seen in nursing homes, how those caretaking facilities have been short on staff, even pre-pandemic. And also there is at least an expanding, I believe, ADHD diagnosis and treatment community because we're being more responsive and understanding of the spectrum of disorders. So did I say ADHD? I mean, oh boy. Autism. Thank you, Mary. Your mic might be off.
The same thing.
Yeah, it is. It's on now.
Autism. Yeah, not really the same thing, but so
Same thing.
the caretaking economy is really growing here, and I'm glad to see that there's more investment in this economy, particularly because one of the reasons why it's so harmful for this caretaking economy right now is because the wages are so low. People are really paid a pittance for what is really demanding, emotionally draining, physically taxing jobs that you don't get a lot of thank for. It's all sort of intrinsic benefits for taking care of another human being. And well, intrinsic benefits, nothing wrong with that. That's great stuff. That can make a life worth living. But what also makes a life worth living is you having the means to put a roof over your head and
What also makes a life worth living is being able to live.
Yeah, and just as a note, part of the reason these are such low paid positions with low wages and low merits is that they're positions that are most commonly held by women and immigrants.
And that's something that actually the Washington Post article that I'm cribbing all this information from, shout out to Washington Post, Democracy Dies in Darkness.
Thank you, sponsor.
They bring up that these positions are disproportionately held by women of color. And there's actually an article in NPR recently, I don't know if it was this last week or the week before, that I was reading, sort of highlighting some of the women who hold positions like this. And one of them was a woman who actually had two jobs, two caretaking jobs, and one she was being paid $9.75 an hour for, and the other one was even less than that, and I don't remember where she was living, but $9.75 an hour sounds like a really meager existence in any part of the country to me.
Me too. Yeah, so raising the wages there, providing more benefits, or some form of long-term sustainability and solvency for that industry, I think is going to be really important. So glad to see more money going there.
I think protections are really needed too. I don't know if that's something that's talked about, but having some sort of protection built in is needed as well.
Yeah, we should get someone on the show who knows about that industry more. 585-219-8889. Matt, any last thing in this multi-trillion-dollar stimulus package?
The last category, the research and development, manufacturing and training, that's getting $580 billion. $180 billion of that would be to just a major clean energy investment in order to reduce emissions, build climate resistance, and boost climate-focused research. It would also double the number of registered apprenticeships in the country to more than 1 million and invest in a more inclusive science and technology workforce. I do want to point out that this bill is called the American Jobs Plan. Jobs is in the title, so it's good.
If it was the American welfare plan, evil, man. I don't want welfare. I want jobs, that's for sure.
That's a brief overview and the extent of the research that I did last night.
Well, I'm glad you cited the public title of this plan, the American Jobs Plan, because the Biden administration is really trying to sell to the American public that this is a plan about jobs. And we have excoriated the idea that in politics, anytime you attach jobs to something, that automatically you have to sort of genuflect, get down on your knees and say, praise Lord and Savior politician for giving us jobs. That's a really silly notion because we've talked about how there's a lot more to life than jobs, and also doesn't tell you what quality of jobs you're getting. Here's a job that pays $9 an hour, have fun, and it's terrible labor, right? So not great. So we know that there's more to jobs than just the word jobs.
Yeah, and I also want to point out real quick some interesting sort of coverage that I was reading last night when I was researching this. And that was that with this bill and with the $1.9 trillion stimulus that was recently passed, people were drawing attention to or reminding everyone of when Joe Biden was sort of campaigning last year and talking about bringing back sort of an era of bipartisan agreement, and how, at least legislatively, this bill and the previous stimulus package he's really been signaling that he doesn't necessarily care, or whether or not he can actually get Republican senators to sign on isn't necessarily a prerogative for him. So some of the commentators were suggesting that in the spirit of bipartisanship, he had really meant to sort of pass legislation that, parts of the country, whether red or blue, could feel good about. I probably explained that horribly, but hopefully you get my drift.
No, Matt, that's really, really important. And this is the thing about politics, folks, that we have talked about on the show, is that we need a politics in this country that benefits all human beings, or at least the vast majority of human beings. So if bipartisanship is a poor choice of words for saying a politics that benefits the vast majority of Americans materially, right? That's what you're sort of defining it as, Matt, I think, or these analysts. I think that's really important. As a citizen in this country, I much more care about the government passing things and funding things that materially benefit my life, more than I care about a token gesture of appreciation for elected, bureaucrats and capitalists in Capitol Hill. I don't care if things pass, if Democrats pass things 51 to 50, right, with the tie-breaking vote by Kamala Harris. It's the Republicans' problem then for not jumping on board in some way, right? I mean, you could also say, well, Jason, wouldn't you be mad if Republicans passed things 51-50 the other way around? Yeah, I would be mad, because probably they're not passing things that materially benefit most people's lives, right? And that's the inherent problem with, like, the parties nowadays, is that Democrats at least are trying to do things that are good faith. And indeed, Republicans were supporting, Republicans didn't attack the $1.9 trillion stimulus plan that just passed by the Biden administration that gave essentially universal basic income for families with children. For those making less than, like, I don't know, $200,000 a year or $400,000 a year or something. It was essentially universal basic income if you have a kid in this country. No one attacked that. You know why? Because it's popular. Because whether or not you're Republican or Democrat, it's popular. You know what? People like it when the government invests in roads, bridges, job training programs, clean energy, clean water, infrastructure, electricity. If you're a Republican and you don't vote for that, that's your problem. Because guess what? Your voters probably support that. And so there's no reason for Democrats to so-called reach a hand across the aisle and see what Republicans want. Because what Republicans want is probably antithetical to what we want. Not just me as someone who lives in a mid-sized city and tends to be blue more than red, but it's sort of that is what bipartisanship is, I guess, nowadays in politics, which is, are we having a party or politicians that pass things that materially benefit most people's lives? And we have not seen that for a long time in this country, and at least what we're getting out of the Biden administration these past couple months is reassuring. So you covered a lot of things in this plan, Matt. When am I going to get my job training program to build a road? When can I expect this? How soon can we expect this plan to pass and trickle down to actually making things happen? Do you know?
I think you could start by writing an email to Chuck Schumer once an hour.
Dear Chuck, as the host of
It's been 45 minutes since my last correspondence.
As the host
you
of
still haven't responded.
We have an official endorsement from one of our co-hosts, Mary Lawrence, who says, Yahoo, I like this. We got to get this passed.
That's not what I said, Jason.
I'm sorry, what was it?
I just said, ooh, I like this.
I will not misappropriate that quote when I send this email to Chuck Schumer.
Wahoo, what's up?
It's a me.
If you're gonna email a representative, you have to get my quote right.
That's
it's not very
true.
hard. It's a very simple one.
Yeah, that's libel.
Dude, if we throw a weight around, we can move this city. We can move this country.
We might be able to shake the table that our computers are on if we throw our weight around.
I keep doing that. I have long legs.
Please don't.
So
I have a lot of equipment in front of me.
On a more serious nature, do we know how soon this might be passed, or will it be passed? Right, because Democrats have the thinnest of margins in the Senate possible, and also very thin in the House.
So they need at least 10 Republicans to vote for it, and of course all of the Democrats and independents who caucus with Democrats in order to pass this, and it's very unlikely that it will pass in its current form, just because getting 10 Republicans to vote for this would be Looney Tunes. It would be the town in Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
My understanding was that this could go through the reconciliation process, just like the recent COVID plan did.
That's right, and I did read that were it to do that, it would probably be, truncated or not as broad in some way. I don't know exactly how, but
yeah. So we'll see what the politicians need to do to get things that benefit people passed. What gymnastics will we have to do to benefit people and invest in infrastructure, even though you ask the random person on the street across any city in this country, should we invest in infrastructure? They say yes. We'll see what we need to do to get something passed. Well, one thing the Biden administration is proposing to do, if and when this thing passes, how do we pay for this? A couple $1 trillion thing. They're proposing to raise taxes on the wealthiest individuals, mainly also wealthiest corporations.
Wait, that's what we've been saying all along.
That's because our endorsements, Mary, have been spot on for the past 137 episodes of Evidence of Design on 100.9 FM WXIR.
And the past 137 years.
We are prophetic. And
very old.
The Biden administration is proposing to raise the corporate tax rate all the way up, folks, all the way up to an astronomical 28%.
What?
But Jason, that's less than it was back in 2017 when the Republicans passed the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act.
How astute of you to remember that as soon as in 2017, the top corporate tax rate was 35%.
That is one of two facts that I keep in my mind at all times. The other is to remember to rinse out my Invisalign before I put it back in my mouth.
Because if you don't, that stuff gets nasty.
I'm glad those two things live in the same part of your brain. It's good to know.
Filed under do not forget.
So Biden would propose raising the corporate tax rate back up to 28%. This could potentially raise billions of dollars for, federal public investment for people. And there's other measures that he would do, hopefully, through legislation, such as trying to capture profits that American companies keep abroad to avoid taxation on, trying to get companies to pay taxes on income they earn now and not ones they can push into the future. If that makes no sense to you, it's because it doesn't to me. But apparently a lot of corporations will forego their tax liability in future years for various reasons. One is an idea that hopefully they'll have less of a liability in the future. And also an idea to have some form of minimum tax so that even if your tax liability is zero as a giant corporation, you'll still have to pay something. Wait a second, how could a giant corporation have a tax liability of zero even though the top corporate tax rate is 21%? Well, my friends, that is the transition cue to the next part of today's show on recent reports showing how the wealthiest individuals and corporations abscond from paying their fair share of taxes.
Tricks are for kids and the very, very wealthy.
This is nothing new. We've covered this before on Evidence of Design on 100.9 FM WXIR in Rochester. It's also a reminder that you can share your thoughts with us at 585-219-8889. That's 585-219-8889. You can also share your thoughts with us on Facebook or Twitter at Radio EOD. My big old mug is also on Facebook at Radio EOD as well. We're live streaming in WXIR studios. So there have been recent reports, folks, and again, this is nothing new, just the most recent analyses of the most recent tax years and tax data that shows, for instance, that, the wealthiest 1% in this country, wealthiest 1% of individuals may avoid paying as much as $250 billion in taxes every year.
You know what's hilarious about that?
What's that, Matt?
The study's been going on for the past 8 years. If we'd been taxing those individuals or these corporations for the past 8 years, we'd have already paid off the $1.9 trillion stimulus package that passed.
Oh my gosh!
If we had been taxing these folks, if they had been paying their taxes that they should have for the past, you're right, Matt, 8 years, which is what the study's been doing, we could have paid for all of the things the federal government has done in the past year for COVID and this infrastructure plan. We could have done that. So the next time a Republican or someone tells you that we don't have the money to pay for it, you tell them that we would if we taxed people fairly. That's all you got to do.
Oops.
That's all you got to do, folks. So, what I'm referring to here, there's many studies about this. Just this one in particular that we're talking about is from researchers in Syracuse University. Their latest study is called Millionaires and Corporate Giants Escape IRS Audits Again in fiscal year 2020. So, again, they write that the wealthiest 1% of individuals may avoid paying $250 billion in taxes every year. Just to put that in another context, the part of the recent $1.9 trillion stimulus package that was just passed by the Biden administration to help, fight COVID-19 and whatnot, the essentially universal basic childhood income allowance in there, the one that says, which is great now, new policy essentially, and instead of just a tax credit, basically if you have a kid, you are going to get thousands of dollars from the federal government every year. That costs $100 billion every year. So just these income taxes that the wealthiest 1% may be avoiding is it's 2.5 times the amount of paying every single American essentially in this country money for having kids. So the amount of money that we're talking about here is enormous. The amount over time is enormous. And by the way, we're only talking about the amount that's not paid based on the current marginal tax rates, right? Whereas in the past in America, the marginal tax rates, meaning what people were taxed, used to be much higher. So we could, this billions of dollars could be trillions of dollars if the top marginal tax rates were reflective of more of American history.
We literally just have to tax Jeff Bezos to make billions of dollars.
Yeah, I mean, there's one man you could do,
Just one.
He needs that money, though, so that he can start building space colonies at the L4 and L5 Lagrange points.
Oh, right, of course. And we have to colonize Mars. Elon Musk is like, I'm trying to get us off this planet. And we're like, we're just trying to get better roads, man.
We've already given up on Earth. Haven't we all already given up? I thought we passed that point, Mary, where we're basically like, this planet's over. Let's go to Mars.
Yeah, Elon Musk needs that money so that he can build a seed ship in order to fly 10,000 human embryos to the Andromeda Galaxy.
So how are these wealthiest individuals getting away with not paying hundreds of billion dollars in taxes every year? Well, according to this study, again, from Syracuse University researchers, the IRS has had a essentially 75% drop in audits of those making more than $1 million a year since 2012. So over the past 8 years, the IRS has essentially decreased the number of times to audit someone making over $1 million by 75%. So that means so many more folks are not being audited who are wealthy. Last year alone, according to these researchers, 98% of those making more than $1 million a year did not get audited. The only person apparently who is getting audited is Donald J. Trump.
Oh man!
According, that's a joke, but it seems like the only person who's audited in this country is Donald Trump.
I mean, there's not that many people who make over $1 million. And Jason, would you mind just really quickly clarifying what it means when you get audited by the IRS?
Yeah, auditing means someone's checking your homework. So you file taxes, you turn it in. Someone, an official tax person at the IRS checks to see if all the information you put in is correct, and if you are, paying the amount that you should pay, and if you're getting back the amount, if any, you should get back. Someone who checks your homework. Why is that important? Because especially if you're someone who makes more than $1 million a year, your taxes are probably pretty complicated. Why? Is because you probably don't just go to your job 9 to 5, make a ton of money
at all
off of your labor, and then just file your taxes. Probably what you and I and most people listening do, right? You go to your job, you make money, that's your only source of income. You don't have much investments, if any. You don't have multiple forms of property. You don't have fancy deductions. You just work, get paid, and pay your taxes.
And maybe you have an unemployment bill.
Right. And if you're on unemployment, your taxes get even more more complicated. But so for the folks who make more than $1 million a year, their taxes can be incredibly complex. Donald Trump's taxes are notorious. Just for instance, Donald Trump. This isn't just about Donald Trump. Just an example. He has so many properties and businesses that trying to figure out taxes on them all, it's probably pretty hard. So you need someone professional who can look at that stuff, in the IRS to say, are these people being taxed fairly? Why? Is because if you don't do that, then the government, as in us, because we make up the government, we all contribute through taxation and benefit from taxation. We all lose out if we're not ensuring that the wealthiest folks are paying their fair share of taxes. So according to the Syracuse University researchers, the IRS has basically given up on being able to audit the wealthiest individuals. It's not just individuals, though. It's also corporations. There's been a 55% decrease in the audits of the largest corporations, those making $20 billion or more. In 2012, just 8 years ago almost all of the giant corporations were audited. In 2020, last year, only a third of the largest corporations were audited. Why is this happening? Well, there's probably several reasons. One is because, I think one of the biggest ones, and I can't comment much beyond this, is that the IRS's funding has been decreased for the past couple decades.
I was just going to ask about that. I mean, you have to have the appropriate amount of staff to start with to even complete these. And that means those people also need to be qualified to do so.
Yeah, Republicans have been adamant about reducing funding for the IRS for
the
decades.
government.
Yeah, for the government.
This is kind of a not on topic, but something that was pointed out to me recently was that part of the reason why we have think tanks is because Congress literally doesn't have the money to write policy anymore.
Right.
Ever since at least Reagan in the 80s. Which is insane. But this is all part of the larger sort of Republican platform to have small government, which really means no government.
Right. Yeah, I mean, so much legislation in Congress comes directly from lobbyists whose interests are not looking out for the American people per se, as Congress people should, but for their own self-interests. Have you seen the documentary 13th that goes into a very famous lobbyist? I'm forgetting their name. I should remember it, but or ALEC, I think. ALEC is the name of it. And how they really advanced these sort of made-to-go Happy Meal drive-through legislation that they can just drop off to, their favorite Republican ultra-conservative legislator and get it passed. So they just sign on the dotted line, essentially, and try to get that legislation passed. So that you're right, Matt, that's neither really here nor there, but it does tie in. Long story short, Republicans have been adamant about reducing budgets for the entire government for a long time, particularly, though, the IRS. For instance, the IRS has a 43% decrease in agents since 2010, so people who can actually analyze taxes. So the IRS has simultaneously have less people able to analyze taxes, while also increasing the amount of work the IRS has to do. For instance, with sending out these stimulus checks, those that come into your bank account come from IRS information and data. And also with these changes to the tax bills, like the 2017 Tax Cut and Jobs Act, Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, massive change to the tax code. The IRS is responsible for all of that, making sure that it's followed and goes through. So there's this two-pronged attack of reducing revenue, reducing funding of the IRS and its ability to do its job, and also increasing its needs to do things that aren't about collecting taxes from people. And therefore, my cynical side thinks that Republicans systematically want to do that so that they themselves and their wealthiest friends, lobbyists, donors, and corporate buddies can get away with tax evasion.
I mean, the people who fund their campaigns directly benefit from this.
Absolutely.
And as do the many politicians who eventually leave office and then take jobs in the private sector.
Right, the revolving door, as it's called in Washington. So not great. Other studies have come out too. Recently from the IRS itself, there's an inspector general for all government agencies, unless you're in the Trump administration where inspector generals are a job of the past. You've been automated out of your job. Now, with good governance, there are inspector generals. And in a recent report by the IRS's inspector general, They write that the IRS has effectively given up on trying to tax the wealthiest individuals and corporations, or at least given up on trying to hold them accountable for paying their taxes.
They're just going to go after poor people now.
Yes. Yes. No, literally, they write, in essence, that everyone is being assessed fairly based on their taxation. And, equity is not the same thing as equality. And so in this case, equality, meaning the poorest person is audited to the same extent as the wealthiest person, is not the same in equity, such that if the poorest person commits tax evasion, which not only is it, I guess, technically harder for them to do because they have less complicated taxes.
We really needed that $700.
Yeah, if that, you're talking probably $40 compared to the billionaires who are holding, $29 billion back or something like that. So according to a report by the Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy that was recently released, at least 55 of the most profitable and largest companies in the U.S. paid no federal income taxes last year, if not over the past 3 years. These companies include FedEx, Hewlett-Packard, and Nike, and many more.
Well, FedEx needed that money to build their new space shuttles that are going to be flying between the L4 and L5 Lagrange points. And Nike needed that money to make space shoes that people are going to wear on the Lagrange point colonies. And I don't know what HP does, but I'm sure they needed that money too.
HP makes
It's a computer
printers.
company.
Yeah. Remember Carly Fiorina ran for president in 2016 against Trump, and then she became the VP for
I totally
maybe
forgot about
Ted
her.
Cruz or something. Yeah, she was like the CEO of HP for a while. And HP makes like these printers. So I'm sure this is common practice throughout the industry, but if you want to buy a printer now, like the thing that you print stuff on out of your computer, like a printer, they have
I'm unfamiliar with the concept. Can you explain it further?
they have. I'm just trying to explain this because it's so baffling to me. They have software now where if you want to use a printer, you have to install like the HP app in order to use that printer. Okay, great. So if
That sounds easy and safe to use.
Easy and safe to use, right? But if for whatever reason your app doesn't work, if for whatever reason you want to cancel using, the HP app, your printer doesn't work anymore. It just sits there. Even though there's nothing wrong with the printer. It's just you have to go through HP's gatekeeping so they can collect your data and ensure that there's planned obsolescence if they want to phase out that aspect of the software. So anyways, I'm rambling here and going off, but yeah, it's really sad. So Nike, FedEx, and HP have not paid any federal income taxes last year, even though all of them were profitable. 55 corporations that the Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy studied had pre-tax income over $40 billion. If they were taxed at the 21% corporate tax rate, which is the law of the land right now, they would have paid $8 billion in taxes. Not only did they pay nothing, but they actually got money back from the federal government, $3.5 billion worth. So we are essentially subsidizing these largest companies. How are they doing this? Well, it's complicated. I don't actually fully understand. And it's not because we're on intelligence. Don't feel bad about not understanding. I think the system is designed that way to be sort of totally obfuscating for the average person. Well, not only is the top corporate tax rate lowered, we covered that in the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017, but, for instance, top executives at companies can buy discounted stock options in the future and then deduct their value on that as a loss. Do I have any idea what that means? No. No idea.
Sounds bad.
Sounds bad. Sounds not productive. The CARES Act that was passed last year has a provision to allow businesses to use losses in 2020 to offset profits earned in previous years, even pre-pandemic years.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That doesn't seem to make sense to me. There's also things like accelerated depreciation, which is the ability for companies to write off the cost of investments in equipment more quickly than the equipment wears out. So they can essentially get more money back from just doing their job, making the company run, buying capital, than it should be. So there are lots of fancy ways that companies get away with not paying a dollar or a dime in federal income taxes. And at least last year, the Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy cites 55 companies, including FedEx, HP, and Nike. We know Amazon, for instance, for the past several years has paid zero federal income taxes. I think now they've paid a very, very marginal federal income tax burden, but they too have been notorious for not paying any taxes to the federal government, even though it's like the largest and most profitable growing company. Not great. It's not great, man. Oh, I wanted to highlight one other company too that was not paying federal taxes. They're known as Archer Daniels Midland. I've never heard of them. They're a food conglomerate.
Yeah, it sounds like a company you never heard of that owns like 85% of the cattle farms in the U.S. or something.
Yeah, that totally controls the agricultural sector. Sure. They apparently they enjoyed a $438 million in pre-tax income last year, and they actually received money back from the federal government of $164 million. I don't know how that works. I don't know
how do you get money back if you didn't pay it to begin with?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, so let me read that again. They had $438 million in pre-tax income, and then they received a federal tax rebate of $164 million. That's like more than 25% of their income they're getting back from the federal government somehow. I don't know how that works.
Yeah, I certainly don't get 25% of my income back.
No, I don't either.
And that was like under $30,000. So it's a lot easier to give me like, $6,000 than it is to give someone $164 million.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to figure out what Archer Daniels Midland does. I'm sure they do good things. I have no idea. But I found this to be insightful. So, again, they're food conglomerates. They have something on their webpage about proteins. Let me read to you a quote from the webpage from Archer Daniels Midland. Decades of proteins experience. We put the pro in proteins. There's a real science to crafting amazing protein products. And we know as well as you do that there's more to it than simply dropping in protein or flavor. Our research and development experts know the mechanics of taste, the impact of various ingredients have on one another, and how to bring it all together to get you to the market quickly and successfully. We work with you side by side at one of our state-of-the-art applications labs at your place until we've got a product consumers will love.
So we're going to show you how to breed cows.
Look, we need money. It costs money to make great tasting food that costs so little, and it's not made of like orphans or runaway children. Orphans are not in the meat.
Yeah. So I wrote my entire undergraduate thesis on consumer manipulation by the agricultural industry, and that would have been a phenomenal example, and maybe I'll go back to it. This is insane.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know I wanted proteins before I read this. Now I need some proteins ASAP because I'm a consumer and I don't want my protein to be dropped in.
I want to be drop kicked.
I don't know what this is about. Anyways, folks, we hope you enjoyed tuning in to Evidence of Design on 100.9 FM WXIR in Rochester. We talked today about the multi-trillion-dollar infrastructure plan. The American Jobs Act that's proposed by the Biden administration to invest a lot of money in roads, bridges, schools, homes, electricity, water, electric vehicles, train transportation, all the good stuff. All the good stuff that gets Mary going. Ooh, I like that.
You got it.
We also talked about several recent studies, including by Syracuse University researchers and also the Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy, showing how the wealthiest individuals and corporations do, not pay their fair share of taxes. I was your host, Jason Taylor, on Evidence of Design on 100.9 FM WXIR in Rochester, joined by my good friends and co-hosts, Matt Treadwell.
Bye-bye.
And Mary Lawrence.
See you later.
I actually need one of you to stall for 20 seconds as I bring up Sestrugi's music.
I'm stalling. I'm in a room with my friends and I'm stalling. This is a song that I wrote called I'm Stalling.
Is that from SpongeBob?
Actually, we could just...
from Elf.
You could just sing the outro instead.
Seeing as how we have the author of the music. Did I do that again? The author, the composer?
Yeah, the poet of the painting.
Anyways, huge shout out to WXIR for allowing these conversations to happen in grassroots radio here in Rochester. It's a holiday weekend for many folks, so whether you're celebrating Easter or Passover or whatever else, happy holidays to you. Till next time, folks, be well, be safe, take care, and bye-bye.